And apparently they were, what's the word? Real wine connoisseurs. Is there a word for that?
Wine
Wine
connoisseurs.
connoisseurs. Yeah, okay. And I like that. I do. And he and he was going on and on about how expensive this wine was, and that how important it was, and I owned this wine, and you know, he was really going on. And I just finally said, so what he did was took your liquid assets, and that changed some things around. You know, he didn't deny it. He said, yeah, liquid assets. That's what I had. But it was almost like it wasn't quite as important to him anymore when it was named that way. I had another kid one. There were two guys that had been doing graffiti on the wall, and they were caught. And the cop had come and caught him, and he pushed him against the wall. He said, our faces were right against the wall. He pushed, you know, and I don't know how it came up. I said, what were you using for? I wasn't thinking of where their faces were then. I just said, well, what were you drawing with? You know, what were you tagging with? And the guy surprised me. And he said, well, we were using shoe polish. And I laughed. I said, shoe polish? He said, he started grinning. Yeah, shoe polish. I said, what color was it? He said, brown. And here's again, you know, putting some things together if you can picture. And I said, boy, that really gives brown nosing a new meaning. You know? And it was a slam dunk after that, you know, because they could go talk about brown nosing. That was in caucus. An awful lot of humor is best used in caucus. I don't know what you do in caucus, but when I go in caucus, I sort of slouch down and sort of, you know, I say, hey, anything we say here is, you know, us. And I say, how do you think it's going? Or some, I try and create a different mood. And humor can be used, and you aren't having to worry to keep a big balance and everything. So you may want to think of caucus as a time when humor can be used. I guess it's my dirty mind, but I did have a guy and a gal who lived together, and they just couldn't get along. I mean, they were fighting all the time and everything. But we were in caucus, and he said, he was telling me, I said, why do you stay? Because she would beat up on him. I mean, there was physical abuse. She would hit him. And he was kind of if you remember the character Casper Milquetoast, and he just said, man, and he was embarrassed. He said, we make love. It's just, it's heaven and everything, you know. And then he'd go back to about the fights and everything, and you know, he was spilling his guts to me, and it seemed like a real problem. And finally, I just said, Charlie, I said, it's your choice. You've got to figure out if the screwing you're getting is worth the screwing you're getting. and
what a reframe! What
wow!
That did frame it. And sometimes the sexual things, the framing can make a difference. This isn't mediation, but I have a psychiatrist friend who I play golf with, and there was another guy who played with, and he started moaning and groaning about his wife. My wife needs to see you. You know, he said when, and he wasn't using dirty language or anything. He was really hurt. He said, you know, when we make love, he says it takes her 45 minutes to reach a climax. You know, she needs to see you. You know, she's uptight and everything, and he kept saying, you know, it takes an hour for her to have an orgasm. Finally, the psychiatrist, he was just teeing up the ball, bends down, tees up the ball, looks back, and he says, "Lucky man." That's reframing. and sometimes if we think of it, and I've given you all my examples. These are rare, but if you can think of it, you might take the risk and try it, because it can make a breakthrough. Do you have some that it's not a category we usually think of? Hopefully after tonight you will.
What was the category?
Wordplay. Yeah. Taking language seriously.
Some people are better at wordplay than others.
Yeah, and my kids are all, and I'm a word person.
Yeah.
And see, my kids are all over me. They think I'm the corniest person in the world, but because I make puns. So, we've got to be ourselves. We can't pretend to be someone we aren't in mediation. I will tell you the one case where I felt like there was divine intervention. And again, I may ask you to turn that camera off here, but it was, there was a member of my family, a fairly close relative, who was off the rails, manic depressive, addicted, just, and I got a phone call saying, "You gotta come down here. There's no one else. You gotta come down here and get her in the hospital." And you have a cousin or a niece or this is tough. And I flew down to Florida, and I go around with her roommate trying to find her. And suddenly, there she is on the street with this guy, this sleazy-looking guy. And she, for some reason, pulls off her watch, throws it at me. I don't know what meaning that had. And she just yelled at me. "Excuse me, but this is the word," she said. I mean, she was out of her mind. She said, "Get away from me, you motherfucker, you cocksucker, get away from me." And I don't know where it came from, but I said, "First yes, the second no." And it just stopped her in her tracks. What? And she went docilely in to a psych ward and got help to find a day and stuff. And there are times if we take language seriously and really listen to what people say, we'll be able to feed it back or do something with it. I throw that out for you, and I hope I didn't offend you. That was on the edge, but she was over the edge in this case. I'd like to show you a few more cartoons and then close with some songs. We got
Close
12
with
minutes.
what?
Songs.
Some songs.
You heard me. There are a number of cartoons here that I think draws the humor in mediation and can be a good reminder for us. This one I should have shown you earlier. So much for satire. Satire usually doesn't work well. Usually being vulnerable ourselves and drawing out the problems. Not with others or not being sarcastic with others works better. I looked at that and I laughed. And, yeah, crazy people, that's what they want. But isn't that our standard in mediation? We want them to be responsible, but we aren't going to write apologies. Etc. That's what we want. Responsibility without guilt. Sounds pretty good to me. And I think humor can help that. I've already suggested that dogs and cats can be surrogate characters for gender issues. And, we're back to What do cats want? That's triangulation. You know, why not ask them? I sat in on a peer evaluation, it was over in Rolling Meadows, where 3 times the plaintiff in the case talked about to the insurance company lawyer there. Said, I just want to know why they wouldn't pay the claim, or why they just pay 50% of the claim. I just want to know. The mediator never picked up on it. You know, never said, why don't you ask? You know, and I think we need to. There's another dog cat one to follow up. You realize I'm taking an enormous personal risk as well as professional risk, just being seen with you. And I think we do have to realize that people are taking risks. You know, we go, and if they settle, it's wonderful, and if they go home, we think, well, better them than me, and go home and everything's fine. And people are taking risks, and to appreciate that and let them know it, I think is a good deal. Back to McGregor, not the rabbit, or the farmer. Soft answer turns away wrath. This one I'll read to you because it's a little hard to see. The husband says to the wife who noticed the door, trust me, Barbara, just ignore him, and in an hour or two, he'll quit trying and go away. I find we as mediators often ignore something so obvious because we're afraid. You know, oh, I didn't want to raise that question because I thought it'd wreck the settlement. You know, it's called reality testing, but we're afraid we won't get it. So we don't talk about it. That can be us. And those of us who train here often find that people who come from a legal background really do struggle to not decide who's right and wrong right to start with. It was fun to be in on the mediation you had, Audrey, where you didn't do that. But we can occasionally look at each other and say, lawyer, or judge, but we all will. There is a time, probably, for reality testing. I don't know how you feel about this one. It could go either way, but I'm not going to. Maybe it's how we do it. I mean, obviously, the guy has said 5 or something like that. And we blow our cool.
That thing about prejudgment and makes me think that that's the other function that humor can play, is sort of to open up what the possibilities are away from a very set mentality that parties come in with. It just sort of expands the situation.
Yeah, people who write on humor and mediation talk about it's almost like creativity or new solutions come in under the radar with humor. That makes it metaphor. I get disturbed when mediators aren't in control of the process. But how we control the process makes it different. Sometimes we play Dan Dictator. This one. I've been saddened to hear that despite the recent restrictions on your freedom, many of you still do not like me. You know, and we can control the table sometimes without lording it over someone. This is an old one, but we're up and like the guy in the rock. It's like the old psychiatrist joke. I don't know how you sit and listen to all that drivel. Who listens? Yeah, they're pretty good stuff. Right? We can ask loaded questions. Is he really going to get an honest answer. If our thumb is on the scale, we won't get it either, even in caucus. And another Calvin and Hobbes. It's what humor is. Often there's an interpersonal textbook where a girl writes her parents home and she's, nah, yeah, I haven't been in touch, but for a long time, but it was because of the fire in the dorm. And she said, but don't worry, a wonderful fireman helped me out, and we're engaged now. And he doesn't speak English very well, and he's been fired from the department, but because of his cocaine habit. But it goes on like this. It starts out, please sit down while you read this letter. It's this, and then at the end of the letter it says, actually none of this happened, but I am failing French. But I just wanted you to know things could be a lot worse. Sometimes we can draw that out of parties. What are the what will happen if? You're getting people to reality tests.
This could be very powerful things with coffee.
Yeah.
And smiling doesn't always work. Again, the soft answer. And finally, I showed this 3 years ago when I did some of this, and I put it on, and Margaret, who was wonderful and marvelous, those of you, Margaret, who was head of volunteers here, just said, I want that, and she stole my copy, and I did it. So, find this out, let you read it. It's worth reading through. This is what we're trying to do in mediation, except we want success. Isn't that good? Yeah, you're still wrong, Dad, but, for a while, there he was open, or if not open, at least he was shook out of his position. Humor can do that in a nice way. I'd like to close tonight. I'll stay around and talk for a few minutes if you want to, and I would, before I do any of you have an illustration that you haven't had a chance to talk about of a different kind of humor? Anything that you want to share or toss in about humor and conflict for the good of the order? I teach a course in persuasion. So, like a lawyer, want to move people. I have to back off in mediation. I went to a convention in New York, communication convention, where there was a session on humor, and I think it was entitled "Humor Fails Again," because everybody thinks that humor ought to be effective in persuasion, and all the studies show that it's not. You give a message, it's one with humor, another with the same stuff in it but no humor, no difference. I think it's because most experimenters are constipated and have trouble coming in. I read the study and it doesn't look real funny to me. However, after 4 presentations of humor, humor fails. The last person was Albert Ellis, maybe you know the name, therapist, founder of Rational Emotive Therapy. And he came in and he said, I've been listening to all this, and all I can say is bullshit. And he passed out some pieces of paper to say, I don't want you to look at this yet. He said, just keep it face down. And, gee, let's see, I think I've got enough copies. I want to save one for myself. You're not to look at it. Keep it face down. That's what he did. And he passed it out, and he said, I find humor very effective. And he said, what I do is I have my clients sing these songs that I've written. And he then, which I will have you do in a moment, had people turn over the sheets and just sing the songs. And I've just put 3 in here. 2 are from him, and I've cleaned them up. They were pretty raw. And then the last one I took a stab at writing. But let's go ahead and turn over, and you all have to sing. Okay? To the tune of Jingle Bells. If you would get release and let your anger out, disrupt the blasted peace and scream and yell and shout. Just go to any length to show you can't be still, and you'll display enormous strength until the time you're killed. Oh, pound, 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 pound your enemies. Oh, what fun it is to stun the one who does not please you. Sock, 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 knock, 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 howl and whine and cry, and everyone from you will run and hate you till you die. Oh, pout, 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 shout, 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 when things are a mess. Rip, 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 slip, slip, slip into profound depression. Drink, 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 think, 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 only of cruel fate. Keep your mind preoccupied with everyone you hate. Yeah, Ellis wrote those, and what? Don't look on the next one.
I can't wait.
And he said, you know, we have this idea that if we let out our anger, we'll feel better. He said, we do, but we get worse. And he said, I have my clients sing these. He also had them on tapes. And he said, they take them home, and, you know, they sing them at home sometime or play the tape at home. The kids hear them. Then their kids, you know, 2 times, and the kids know the word. And they start singing it just while they're going around the house, and they hear the words coming back at them. And he said, it changes. Human beings are the only creature on this earth that can talk themselves into trouble. But as far as we know, we're the only creature that can use humor, to get ourselves out of trouble. And he says, this works. Just to throw another edge, to the tune of Yankee Doodle, this is not conflict stuff, except we do get some conflict things. A few of the scenarios we do in training have this kind of relationship. Love me, only me, or I'll die without you. Make your love a guarantee so I will never doubt you. Love me totally, and I shall get by, dear. If I must rely on you, I'll hate you till I die, dear. Shall I step it up? Is that
Because if I must rely on me.
or on me? Yeah. I'm sorry. Second one. Freudian slip there. Was that too low? Okay. Love me all the time, thoroughly and wholly. Life turns into slush and slime unless you love me solely. Love me with great tenderness, with no ifs or buts, dear. If you love me somewhat less, I'll hate your grubby guts, dear. Yeah, I cleaned it up a little bit.
What did you change? I was just kind of curious.
What?
I'm curious what you changed.
Well, I get, at Wheaton, where I love teaching, and I love the students, they're smart, they're people of faith, yeah, I mean, it's marvelous, I can't think of a better job, but we get people who are love slops. They think a marriage relationship is just to be the absolute perfect, you know, and you're gonna have mutual
What did you call it, love?
love slops.
Slops,
You know, sort of
oh,
a
okay.
sloppy agape. And, you know, I talk a bit about this. The last one, I took a stab at writing one. I went through a 12-step program because of family members that were alcoholics, and alcohol in AA, etc. They talk about enabling, you know, allowing a person to be trapped. So sing the great enabler to the tune of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer with me. This is written from a parent's standpoint. I am the great enabler. There is nothing I wouldn't do to make sure my kids are happy, even though they're chugging brew. Tough love is so disturbing. On setting limits I'm not keen. What if my friends and family look at me and think I'm mean? Life is best when I detach, let my children feel the consequences of their acts, choices in a world that's real. But I'm the great enabler, crazy but I just can't see. Faced with my codependence, my kid could soon be history. This has been helpful for some parents who just can't bring themselves to laying down some rules and sticking with them. We laugh at ourselves in this. I don't know if this has helped you at all technique-wise to use humor in mediation. I hope it frees you up to give it a try. The article that I passed out gives you official permission from a mediation journal to take some risk and try. And if you end up with egg on your face and people file a complaint
laugh at
against
that.
you, yeah.
Send them to
Don't
you,
blame me. I'll say I never told you, and we'll learn to take. Thanks much for coming down
you.
tonight on a
Thank you.
rainy night.